All right, little thank you, everyone, for joining today. So welcome to the Society of Thoracic Surgeons Congenital Heart Surgery Database User Group call. Today is Tuesday, September the 5th. Hope you all had a great holiday weekend and had a nice, for those of you that were off yesterday, hope you had a nice day off. Enjoying the remaining parts of summer that we have left. I'm not looking forward to it going away. So let's go ahead and get started with today's call. On the call with me today, we've got myself from the STSI, we've got myself and Carol Crone, we've got Addie Dolan, and Melinda Offer, and then on our core group and consultant side, we've got Janet, Leslie, Chastity, and Dr. Jacobs and Dr. Meyer on the call with us today. I'm not sure if Ram's joining today, so Dr. Subramanian may be joining us throughout the webinar, but we'll see if he's able to hop on. So in the meantime, for the agenda, just have some brief STS updates, and then I will turn everything over to Chastity and Leslie for their portion of the call today, and then we'll finish up with Q&A. And as usual, if you have questions, please submit those via the Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and turn the chat off for now. So if you can, be sure to submit those questions via the Q&A function. And as always, our raise hand function is enabled. If you'd like to just ask your question, just please be sure to raise your hand and make sure your microphone is enabled on your end, and we'll get you unmuted for your question. All right. For STS updates, the September training manual will be posted by the end of this week. In previous webinars, I had talked about our STS website and the IQVIA library cleanup that was completed. And again, the purpose of this cleanup is to help me maintain version control of the various documents that are out, that were out there. So moving forward, additional resources are now included in the analysis overview and or the training manual. So if you need to locate those rules to determine primary diagnosis and primary procedure and a listing of the combination codes, those are now included in the CHSD analysis overview, which is now posted out on the STS website, again, under the additional resources under version 6.23.2. Also, there was an updated version of Appendix C also posted. And again, that's also located under the additional resources for version 6.23.2. And just to reiterate, there were no changes to any scores or categories. I just updated the reference to 6.23.2. I believe the previous document referenced version 6.23.1. So again, there were no changes to any scores or categories, just updated the reference to the correct data version for that updated Appendix C. All right, Fall 23 harvest, as you guys I'm sure are all very much aware, the harvest is approaching close. So the harvest will close September the 15th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time with an opt-out of no later than September the 19th. This Fall 23 harvest will include surgery dates of July 1, 2019 up through June 30th of 2023. The at-risk for exclusion emails will be sent 1 week prior to our harvest close, so you can expect those to come out this Friday, September the 8th. And previously, those were sent out 2 weeks prior to harvest close, but we have updated the timing of those letters to a little bit closer to harvest close as you all are continuing to clean up and submit your data for 2 weeks prior to the close date. So those are now will be sent 1 week prior. And again, you can expect those to come from me on Friday, September the 8th. AQO 2023, as you are aware, our registration is underway, and that session is scheduled for our CHSD session is scheduled for Friday, September the 29th. Before the meeting, there will be a know before you go email that will include your login credentials and additional information regarding the virtual meeting. So once you register, if you were to register today, you won't immediately receive those login credentials. Those will be sent from STS just prior to the meeting. So again, more information, you'll get that know before you go email with your login credentials closer to the start of AQO. A preliminary agenda is now available out on the STS website. So if you'd like to take a look at the preliminary agenda, it is out there for your review. And also, if you are having some issues getting your institution to approve your attendance for AQO or even for just keep this in mind for AQO in the future when we get back to in-person in 2024. If you need a justification letter, that can be provided, and that justification letter will be personalized. And you can use that to let your supervisor or C-suite know how important it is for you to attend the AQO meeting. This letter is signed by our STS president and lists the benefits of attending, as well as does provide, potential return on investment for your organization. So that is also available at this time out on the STS website. If you have any issues or questions regarding AQO, please feel free to reach out. Happy to assist in any way. This morning I was notified by IQVIA of an issue that has been identified by them regarding the missing variable report. So this morning, issue STS 9674 is currently under review by the IQVIA development team, where the pregnancy complication multi is displaying as blank on the case form after the data was uploaded. And the MVR is displaying that the variable is missing, despite the data is available in the DAT file that you submitted. So the root cause is they have identified that it is now a multi-select field on version 6.23.2. For the previous versions, the options were all individual variables, and the required mapping has to be completed on the IQVIA end to correct this issue. So they are currently working on this correction, and they will let us know of the release date to production when this will be available. They're working on it and hope to have it corrected as soon as possible. But it's important for you to know that this missing data on the missing variable report will not impact your current harvest analysis. They are also posting a notification within the platform. So if you are receiving this missing data for the pregnancy complication multivariable in your missing variable report, and you know the data is there, again, just ignore that warning or error that you're getting from them. That is being corrected on the IQVIA side, and we will let you know as soon as possible when that is corrected within the platform. That's all I have for the STS updates. I'm going to turn things over to Chastity and Leslie for their portion of the presentation. So Chastity, Leslie.
Great, Leanne, thank you. If you'll go to the next slide. So as usual, we have some topics to educate on with 6.23.2. We're keeping it very light this month since we know harvest is closing, and that's probably the more burning issue for everybody. So today we're going to talk about some updates and clarifications made to our readmission definition, as well as the post-op event of arrhythmia necessitating a permanent pacemaker. And then Leslie's going to go over some tips for a successful harvest. Next slide. So just a reminder about your training manual. This is not different than in the prior version, but training manual updates will be made monthly, at least monthly, and then you'll see the new version posted on the STS website. So as Leanne has already stated, the September training manual will be posted by the end of the week. So updates will be denoted in red font, and you'll see that there will be a month year, like updated September 23. And so that way you know when this change, clarification, messaging went live. And just know that when something says, say, updated September 23, that means surgery dates are on or after 9/1/23. So just that you're aware for how you're reading the training manual. It's pretty inherent in the manual, so it should be fine, but just in case you have any questions. Next slide. So looking at readmissions. So readmissions were recently discussed at the task force level last month. And so we have revised our current definition. For some of you, this won't be a change. For others of us, it is a big change. So recalling in the previous definition that readmissions did not include any patient that came back to the hospital on observation status, regardless of the length of time a patient stayed on observation status. Well, it's been recognized that for states or local areas where observation status could occur for greater than 24 hours, this is very problematic if we ever wanted to compare readmission rates between hospitals, because of course, in some areas, any amount of time over 24 hours is considered an admission. And so then, if you compared, a hospital, say on one side of the country to a hospital on the other side of the country, readmission rates could vary drastically. And so it doesn't seem like a level or even playing field when we're really adhering to our local billing data or billing structure. So the task force reviewed this and came up with a new definition then for the field, 4890, readmission within 30 days. And this is readmission within 30 days of surgical hospital discharge. So readmission still will not include observation stays. However, if the observation turns into an inpatient admission, or if the patient's on ob status for greater than 24 hours, then this will be considered a readmission. This way, it will level the playing field between all hospitals, regardless of how billing or your state Medicaid or local areas define admissions versus observation visits. So this will even that playing field. In the event that an observation visit becomes an inpatient admission, you're going to use the first day of the observation as the readmission date. So this is exactly what the training manual looks like and how it's been updated. And you can see it says update September of 23, meaning surgery dates from September 1st forward. Next. So then moving on to post-operative events, and specifically we're looking at post-op event 74, which is arrhythmia necessitating pacemaker, permanent pacemaker. And this is a clarification. So the clarification has been made now, but it's really for the entire version of 6.23.2. No longer will this event of permanent pacemaker overlap with the post-op event of unplanned cardiac reoperation. And so it's a reminder that we are collecting the need for a permanent pacemaker placement through the major event timeframe, which in the training manual is spelled out that you're collecting for the timeframe that is the longest, whether this is through the 30th postoperative day, through the end of the surgical hospitalization, which would be through surgical hospital discharge, or through the end of the episode of care should the patient not discharge to home following discharge from the surgical hospital. So this is all clearly delineated in the training manual, but so the arrhythmia necessitating permanent pacemaker is a standalone major morbidity post-op event. And so this definition is the same. We've always been collecting it for the major event timeframe in 6.23.2, but we realized that we didn't specifically say do not overlap with the unplanned cardiac reop, and we should have. It's how the definitions are written, so this isn't new, but just we wanted to highlight it, point it out, and clarify it in the training manual. So next slide. So let's go through a couple of case scenarios with what I've just presented in regards to updates to the training manual. So 14 days following VSD repair, a patient is admitted with complete heart block and the cardiac surgeon places a permanent pacemaker upon readmission. So should postoperative event arrhythmia necessitating pacemaker, permanent pacemaker be captured on the VSD repair? So give a couple thoughts to this. And Leanne, we'll go to the next slide. So the answer is yes. So the patient, it's 14 days post VSD repair that the patient comes back. So thinking about the major event timeframe that I highlighted on a previous slide, that you're going through whatever is the longest timeframe. So for this patient, the 30th postoperative day. And so yes, we would capture this event. Next slide. 14 days following VSD repair, a patient is admitted with complete heart block, and the cardiac interventionalist performs a permanent pacemaker placement in the cardiac cath lab. Now, should postoperative event arrhythmia necessitating permanent pacemaker be captured on the VSD repair? Next slide. The answer is yes. So you'll see in the training manual, this already exists in the training manual, but it does not matter where the procedure was performed or who performs the permanent pacemaker placement. The fact is it's a major postoperative event that the patient required a permanent pacemaker within the major event timeframe. Next slide. Question 3. 14 days following VSD repair, a patient is admitted with complete heart block and a permanent pacemaker is placed by the cardiac surgeon. Should the postoperative event, unplanned cardiac reoperation, be captured on the VSD repair? Next slide. So the answer here is no, because in version 6.23.2, these events were designed to not overlap. So the permanent pacemaker as a standalone is a major postoperative event, followed by the major postoperative event timeline for capturing those events. Next slide. Question 4, 14 days following VSD repair, a patient is admitted with complete heart block and a permanent pacemaker is placed. Was the patient readmitted within 30 days of hospital discharge? Yes or no? Next slide. So yes, so readmission 14 days following surgery must mean that it was within 30 days of hospital discharge. Next slide. Question 5, 14 days following VSD repair, a patient presents to the ED with chest pain and is placed on observation status for 3 days to watch for arrhythmias. Was the patient readmitted within 30 days of hospital discharge? Yes or no? Next slide. So yes, because this is the new definition, observation status was longer than 24 hours. So we will consider, despite the fact that the patient was on observation status for the entire 3 days, that we would call this a readmission. Next slide. 14 days following, I need new scenarios clearly. 14 days following VSD repair, a patient presents to the ED with chest pain and is placed on observation status for 3 days to watch for arrhythmias. What date should be entered as the date of readmission? Would it be the date the patient arrived on observation status, the date the patient was on observation status for greater than 24 hours, or the date the patient discharged to home? Next slide. So it is going to be the date the patient arrived on observation status. And again, this is spelled out in the new definition under readmission. I think that's my last slide. Yep.
Great. Thanks, Chastity. So we're going to jump right into harvest review tips and tricks. So as a reminder, Leanne went over this. The harvest is set to close on September 15th at 11:59 Eastern time. Please do not wait until 11:58 Eastern time, just to make sure that there's plenty of time for that file to be run and accepted, and for you to get through anything that you need to get through. So our theme today is to submit early and often, however possible that is for you. Your opt-out date is September 19th. And then as a reminder, there will be a harvest report coming out September 8th, this Friday, for participants who are at risk of not meeting mortality and risk model thresholds. And as a reminder, this report cannot be rerun. It is just a one-time courtesy. This was a request of multiple people just to kind of keep all of your team on the same page with where we are, and to hopefully avoid any unknown missing being included in the analysis report. So harvest early and often, but the deadline is September 15th at 11:59 Eastern. Next slide. So we're not going to go too detailed today. We're going to kind of stay high level with the harvest review because lots of these tips we've dug into in many layers on previous webinars. So I wanted to review quickly how to get to those previously published webinars. From the STS website, you'll go to the national database. Next slide. You'll scroll down until you see congenital heart surgery database and click on resources for data managers. Next slide. Next slide again. And then you'll scroll down again further, and at the very bottom there, next slide, you'll see view past CHSD webinars, and you'll click that. Perfect. Next slide. And then that brings you to this sort of CHSD YouTube channel, and this goes in descending order of all of the webinars that are out there and published, so you can review them. This is a great idea, not just at harvest time, but if you missed one of our monthly webinars, we have been covering a lot of information on the new version, and changes are always reviewed during these calls. So it's always a good idea to review when you have a moment. Next slide. Two in particular that we think are a good idea to review now would be the August 16th, 22 CHSD webinar. This has very detailed harvest tips. Chastity had gone through the different reports that are out there, how to use them, and what they show you. So that's a great one. And then also the May 17th, 2022 webinar. This one covers a lot of updates having to do with the changes to stat scores, Appendix C, combination codes, sort of when we started getting into all of those details. And that obviously is still applicable with this harvest period. So if you need updates on those changes, that's a great webinar to review. Next slide. Okay, so once you've kind of done that and gotten into all the details, I thought it might be a good idea to review just a quick to-do list. So when harvest deadlines are approaching, or whatever your individual style is, this is a good, like, kind of high level to get yourself ready. So the first thing is to run your local software and reports. Next slide. And that could include things like individual case validation. So you might be a site that as you enter a case, you can go to your software specific validation tool and see things that are outside of the limit, too low, illogical, or missing values. You may have missing list reports created by your software or something you've developed at your site. I have this to search for missing fields from that are in the risk model. I just do that locally before I submit to IQVIA. 30 or 365-day statuses. 30-day status, of course, is part of our mortality threshold. You have to be under 2% for that, but 365-day is not included in those metrics yet, or not at all. I don't know anything, didn't mean to misspeak. But those are reports that are available on some software platforms or other follow-up for patients that may have gone to another hospital. You're watching, 30 days post-surgery, or that you might have some send-out testings or things that you're waiting for to get cleaned up for harvest. So those would be your locally stored reports or your software stored reports. Next slide. Once you've done that, you can get ready to then submit to IQVIA and check the DQR. Next slide. So you will create your file. That's going to be software specific how you create that, but then you log into the IQVIA uploader and either drag and drop or browse from that screen to get your file and submit. And then you're going to check for upload completion. So on the left side of that screenshot, there's a green check mark. That means that the file was accepted to IQVIA. However, on the right side of that screenshot, you'll see a little red X, and that red X stands for critical errors. So you'll notice my number there is 712 out of 717, meaning I sent 717 cases, and they only accepted 712. And what's very important about this number is that those 5 cases will not be in any of the other reports in IQVIA. So this is a hard stop for me, that red X. You need to make sure you find those and get them updated. So next slide. Okay, so that when you click on reports and you get to your DQR or data quality report, these are the symbols that I showed you on that previous screen. Critical errors mean the case is not submitted to IQVIA and not included in any of those reports that we're going to use later. So those need to be fixed immediately in your software, rerun your harvest file, and resubmit to IQVIA. Then your yellow X are errors. And these mean that the case was submitted to IQVIA, but there are fields that are invalid or illogical, and they need to be double-checked, fixed, and resubmitted. And then finally, the blue exclamation point are warnings. This again means that the case was submitted to IQVIA, but it might need a double check. It doesn't mean that it's invalid. It means that there might be something going on that you need to review. And if you do make changes, again, don't forget to resubmit. Okay, next slide. Once your DQR has been checked, you've fixed your critical errors and resubmitted, then I would suggest moving on to the primary procedure mismatch and mortality eligibility summary. Next slide. This is available under the operational reports tab in IQVIA. Next slide. And then you will click on the report, pick your harvest period, and then run the parameter, or view parameters, I think it says, run the report. And this is where you'll find your mortality eligibility summary. When you hear us say you need to be under 2%, that is the report you need to work on to get under that 2% threshold. So same thing, check your errors, check your missing, update in your software and resubmit. check your procedure mismatch and update if appropriate. And what I mean there is you are not required to match your primary procedure to what it says it should be, or you might not be able to. So as we reviewed some of those new like 5,000 codes, we can't use those yet. Well, we can in 623, we can't in 341. So you might not be able to update, but if you do update, make sure that you rerun and resubmit. Next slide. Okay, after primary procedure and mortality eligibility summary is complete, you can move on to the harvest summary report. Next slide. This again is an operational reports. Next slide. And here you'll enter your date range. So this could be different than your harvest period, your 4 years. You'll check for outstanding warnings and errors. Again, fix in your local software and resubmit. And things that might be here are, I often find 365-day status, like it's been a year, I should know, but I might not have updated it yet. I recently had a missing surgeon NPI, and I have version discrepancies if I have different versions in that report. So I check that as well. Next slide. Okay, and finally, the IQVIA missing variable report. Next slide. And here also in operational reports, you'll click and open this report, enter your date range. You can select index only or not. I start with index only. Feel free to do whatever makes the most sense to you. There's filters within this report. You can fix your missingness, update locally, and resubmit. Next slide. And this one I did give a little example here. So on the left side, I have right now it's highlighted over mortality, but it's also available for all missing fields, mortality fields, anesthesia fields, or the risk model. And then when you click in the box at the top, you'll have a dark blue kind of tab that says 1% missing 4 out of 485. And at the bottom, it gives you those 4 individual cases. So you can look them up in your software, in your medical record, update whatever information it is that you need to, and then submit those cases. Now, I have only selected index operations. So on the left side, you'll see op types 1 and 2. Those filters may change if you have all cases selected and not just index. Okay, next slide. So those now are all done, and you should be in pretty good shape then for your harvest. You won't hear if you're eligible under that 2%, you'll be good and eligible to get the analysis report. You've identified all of your risk model, mortality, and anesthesia, whichever fields have been missing. You don't have any outstanding critical errors or warnings, and you've done as much as you can for your missing variable report. So this should put you in good shape then for the harvest. Next slide. Okay, in summary, for both Chastity and I, always use the most recent training manual posted. Note the updated definitions and clarifications, those will be in red. Individual questions will not be posted in the training manual. For harvest, utilize your local and IQVIA reports. Submit harvest early and often, and as always, we're available for help. I forgot to throw a slide in, but I wanted to do a quick FAQ update. FAQs that had to do with version 341, so prior to July 1st cases, have all been, at least from our records, been answered and sent out. So if you are missing anything, please email me at my STS mailbox, lwacker@sts.org this week, so that I can review and make sure we get you an answer if needed. Okay, I think that's it for Chastity and I.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Chastity. That was a great overview for us with the harvest getting ready to close. So appreciate that very much. Next, we're going to have our open discussion. I do see some questions coming in. So let's go ahead and tackle some of our questions. All righty. Let's see here. Question number 1 from Brooke for Chas and Leslie. When does a 24-hour time period begin for the observation status? For example, a lot of our patients will stay on observation for a cath procedure. They come in the hospital in the morning like 0600, and then they stay overnight and typically get discharged the next morning, afternoon. Does the time start at admission, or would it start at the end of their scheduled cath when the observation period actually begins?
I guess I would say that their observation period doesn't begin if they came in from home and during the cath, their observation would begin when they hit the floor following the cath, when they hit a bed. So I think, as Dr. Jacobs is saying, OR exit time or cath lab exit time would be the time that would start that clock. Great question, Brooke.
Yep, great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jacobs. Becky, let's see, for the adult data fields, if our surgeons were to enter these data themselves and the information may not be easily abstracted from the chart, what is your recommendation for adjudication for an audit?
Oh, that's a good question. So adult specific data fields right now are not included in the audit.
Correct.
However, adult patients, they can still be audited, like your normal fields could still be audited, and you're obviously going to have your case list and other things. But I think it has to be documented. I'm not sure how else to answer that question. I don't think we can have just.
I think the data collection, exactly what Leslie is saying, is the same, whether it's the new adult fields or the old or the existing congenital fields that we would answer on everybody. If not easily abstracted from the chart, you still have to be able to, validate where you received the information, regardless of who is collecting the data, your surgeons or, a data team or other folks. Leslie's correct that the adult fields, the new adult fields that came over from the adult database are not going to be audited currently.
Correct.
So I don't know if that helps your question. I mean, I guess personally at my own site, we're going about data collection just as we're treating the adult fields as we would treat any of the other fields. If we don't know something, we're leaving it blank, and perhaps having a few more conversations with, the adult congenital cardiologists who perhaps, sent the patient to us to try to get more information or have them include more information in their H&Ps and things that we're looking for. But we're treating the fields the same otherwise.
Thank you, Leslie. All right. From Maori, post-op, I think we talked, did we talk about this last, I don't know. Post-op blood administration within 24 hours after operation in patients with age at surgery greater than 65-75, captured on sequence 2355, overlaps with the units collected under sequence 4690. What's the recommendation for data collection?
So with the blood collection, there's 3 different ways that it's being done in the database. There are the congenital surgery fields, then there are the adult specific fields, and then there's the anesthesia field. So yes, they all ask for blood in a different way. And currently there is just some overlap in how they are asking for blood. To be able to compare with the analysis from the adult database, we needed to be able to keep for the patients that are greater than 18, the same as how the adult database collects it. But the congenital surgeons want it done a different way. So for this version, there are 3 different ways, in addition to if you do anesthesia, that you are collecting the blood. And it's painful. We understand that.
Yep, it's duplicate, but you do it however it's written for that field.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, on the MVR, when will we be able to exclude the anesthesia fields? I was sworn this was on the enhancement list a while back. I'll have to go back and review. I know we added the anesthesia filter.
Yeah, I do vaguely remember this, and I don't know if there was ever really a timeline given to it, or if it was just like, okay, yeah, we hear you and we'll put that on.
Yeah, okay.
For future.
Yeah. Thank you, Amy. When we review that list with the IQVIA team, so I will make a note and follow back up on that specific variable, that's specific filter. Goodness, can't talk today. All right, and I'm making a note. Anesthesia. Thank you. Sorry, I don't have an answer for you right now, but again, I'll follow up with the with IQVIA. All right.
Can
While
I
we-
ask a question? This is
Sure.
Janet. I'm sorry, I can't type in the box.
No, sure, go ahead.
Regarding the observation change to the definition, has that been discussed with the PC4 team?
No, not directly. They are gonna need to figure out what they want to do with their definition as to whether they want to maintain what our definition will be, or if they want to potentially update and have their own field.
Mhm.
But you know, we're the surgical database and we have our own definition, and we changed this to update our field. And you know what this still doesn't address what PC4 was looking for, so I don't know what they will do.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, we own the field, so I
Yeah,
just wanted to clarify that when I explain it to folks. Thank you for that information.
thank you, Janet. Thank you, Chastity. And Amy, I understand, yeah, there are a lot of anesthesia fields, and to be able to filter those out would be nice. So I definitely understand that. All right, thank you, Janet. While we're waiting for some additional questions, just for our upcoming webinars, please note that our monthly webinar on September the 19th is canceled. We are going to be very swamped with AQO during that time, so most of our time will be dedicated to prepping for AQO. So we have canceled that monthly webinar on the 19th, and its post and harvest will have just closed as well. So our next scheduled webinar is the user group call that was originally scheduled for 10/3. We have moved that back a week to 10/10, so for October the 10th. And an email will go out from STS marketing team, the webinar reminder. So that will go out prior to the webinars again, just to let you know of the change in date. So again, that user group call is now scheduled for October the 10th, as opposed to October the 3rd. We'll just be wrapping up AQO, and we need a week to recover from AQO. So we'll be scheduled that next user group call for the 10th. Our next question from Barb, the primary procedure mismatch report listing primary using the 5000 series procedure codes. There is not action for us in this harvest, correct? That is correct.
Yep.
So you cannot update any of those 341 record surgery dates with the 5000 procedure codes because they were not available to you during that time. You're welcome, Barb. All right. In the meantime, again, if you have any questions regarding during the harvest, if you have any questions about the files that you've uploaded or anything in the primary procedure mismatch reports, anything regarding your harvest, please submit those questions to stsdb_helpdesk@sts.org. I'd love to be able to help you, but unfortunately, I do not have access to your data at this time like I used to have in the past. So if you can, please be sure to submit those questions to stsdb_helpdesk@sts.org, and those questions will get escalated and answered accordingly. And our contact information is here, my email, and then as well as Chastity and Leslie. So again, just remember to submit those questions. If you have questions regarding coding, submit them to the FAQ mailbox directly and not the STS emails for Leslie and Chastity. Again, just please submit those via the FAQ so we can track them, see what's coming in, and then make sure everyone's educated accordingly on questions that we are receiving over and over. All right. Let's see, Maggie, is COVID information still being collected in 623? So yes, COVID is still being collected in 623. All right. Let's see, Chastity, Leslie, do you guys have any other items or anything? Let's see. Oh,
I do not.
Okay. Alrighty. All right. Well, I guess with that, I am not seeing any additional questions come in. I know, again, we're getting close to harvest, so I'm going to give you all back 15 minutes of your day. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. And with that, we'll see you guys at AQO. And then we'll also see you on our next user group call for October the 10th. All right. Yes, thank you, Chastity and Leslie, for a phenomenal presentation. The harvest close coming up, that review was perfect. Perfect timing. And then Chastity, thank you as always for our clinical education and our FAQ updates. We appreciate it. All right, everyone. I'll give you back 15 minutes every day. Thanks everybody for joining. And I hope you guys have a great remainder of your week. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks, everyone.